Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to the best animated shows ever, so far, with MC and Troy.
I'm Troy.
And I'm MC.
And this is the best animated shows ever. So far. I can't do the super long wait. Listening back to the Biker Mice from Mars episodes, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so long. It's so much silence.
I love it. Oh, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable silence.
It is uncomfortable.
I love it.
It's such a long wait. This is a podcast where we watch, discuss, and rank every single animated show ever, eventually. And today we're talking about SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob. This is not where we start normally, but holy smokes, that theme song. I was like, all right, we're going to watch SpongeBob. Okay, I put it on, and just as soon as the theme song kicked in, and I was like, just filled with happiness. And I was never even a huge SpongeBob fan.
No, neither was I. And here's the thing, like, watching it, I found myself giggling at stuff.
Yeah, I did too.
That, like, as a kid, I didn't really giggle at. Like, my sister was the one who liked SpongeBob, and she's the one who had it on. And there's a lot of nostalgia for me, but...
Yes! I had the exact same experience. I found this nostalgic, even though, like, if you had asked me before I watched it, I was like, no, I don't have any nostalgia for SpongeBob. And then I watched it and was like, aw. Yeah. This was an interesting one. So, before we talk about the first episode, which has 3 stories in it, which is going to make for a weird discussion, but oh well. I got facts.
Go right ahead.
This episode, the very first premiere episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, came out May 1st, 1999. So I don't think either of us we weren't too old for SpongeBob, but we both had younger siblings. I think that's what the trick was.
I was 12. You would have been 10?
I was 10. Yeah, so it was like, I wasn't out of the age range.
No.
But since I had younger siblings, I was like, oh, that's their show. It's one of those kids' shows.
Yeah, that's how I saw it as well. Because my sister's 4 years younger than me. So she a couple of years younger than you at the time. So it's like one of those things where, oh, that's her show.
Yeah.
But because I was around when she was watching it, I didn't realize I was getting like, or I was going to get all this nostalgia of like, oh yeah, me and Elon used to watch this all the time.
Yeah, very much. I was thinking about it. I think this was the height of Toonami. So I think you and I were both like, oh, we're watching cool anime right now. We're not kids shows.
It was all Dragon Ball Z and
what was that
Samurai X and
oh man. Ikaru? No. Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up. Anyway,
Inuyasha.
Yes, that's the one. That is exactly the one I was thinking of.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, I was trying to think of it as well.
Let's see. SpongeBob SquarePants was created by Steven Hillenburg, although you wouldn't know it from the first episode because his name is spelled wrong on the credits for the very first episode. That's like the saddest thing to me. How did that happen? Steven Hillenburg was a weird and awesome dude. He actually just passed away November 26th of 2018. But he had a super cool career. He was a marine biologist and then a marine biologist teacher who made up SpongeBob SquarePants, although he was called Sponge Boy at the time, as like a little comic book character to use to teach his students while he was teaching marine biology.
That is weird and awesome.
Isn't that weird? And then he became an animator and worked on Rocko's Modern Life. And while he was working on Rocko's Modern Life, in the background all the time, he was drawing SpongeBob. Not like in the background of the show, but like as a side hustle, he's like developing SpongeBob. And then just it happened and exploded and was like the biggest thing ever.
Oh,
and he was actually a marine biologist. Like he made it because he liked marine biology and was like, there should be a cartoon about this. What a weird and awesome dude. And I found this interesting. He actually worked on the show and then left, which I didn't realize. So around the time the first movie came out, he left because he was like, this is done. This show should be done at this point. We have done all we can with a cartoon about a sponge. I'm out. And then when they wanted to make the second movie, he was like, all right, fine. And he came back and worked on it up until he passed. He was working on it. So he was gone for a couple of years in the middle, but it was his baby.
Look how long it ran. Like, it's still running.
Is running? Yeah, it's still going. It's next year will be 20 years of SpongeBob, man. That's crazy. Yeah. For a kids show, I mean, like, cartoons that have run 20 years, we've got Simpsons and
Flintstones.
Family Guy's probably close to that. Flintstones didn't have new episodes for 20 years. I mean, it's been on the air.
Yeah. No, well...
South Park. Flintstones has had, like, iterations, though. There's been a bunch of different versions of it. It hasn't been one consistent show.
But it has had 20 years of, like...
There's probably 20 seasons of Flintstones cartoons. That's
I don't think... True. And there's definitely not that of the Jetsons, but...
No, the Jetsons, I think, only has, like, 3 seasons or something like that. We should know these things.
Yeah.
We're not cartoon experts. We're just cartoon fans.
Yeah. But, like, we'll get round to those shows, and eventually we'll rank them and stuff, so...
For sure, man. We had originally talked about doing, like, action cartoons exclusively. Which Biker Mice from Mars totally fit into. SpongeBob does not. No, it's not an action cartoon at all, but it's
fun.
I liked it. Let's get into it. Do you want to summarize Help Wanted, or I wrote up very brief summaries, so I can do those if you want.
Yeah. Oh well, if you do this episode, I can do the other ones.
Okay. Cool. So the very first story in the first episode of SpongeBob SquarePants is called Help Wanted. SpongeBob is off to get a job at the Krusty Krab, where Squidward, his neighbor, works. Not wanting to hire the boy on, Mr. Krabs sends SpongeBob off to find an impossible spatula. But while he's off on his quest, a group of anchovies swarm the restaurant, overwhelming Squidward and Mr. Krabs, and they only get saved when SpongeBob shows back up with the impossible spatula and makes like 1 billion burgers to the sounds of Tiny Tim's ukulele.
Yep.
It's great.
That's a great summary of exactly what happens. It's so funny. It's like all my notes. So I do dot point notes, and it's like intro to Bikini Bottom, but it's changed it to Baking Bottom.
Baking Bottom. That sounds about right.
Yeah. And then it my next note is lives in a pineapple, silly, which is not my line. It's the narrator's line. He goes.
Does he say that?
Yeah, he goes, and of course he lives in a pineapple, silly.
Oh yeah, that's right. He does.
Yeah.
Which, I like the narrator. Apparently that's the same voice actor who does SpongeBob, does the weird French narrator introductions on some of the episodes.
So, I'm gonna skip forward a bit.
All right.
To the next episode. In this episode,
okay.
I think the narrator's the only one who speaks in that one.
I don't think even he speaks. I don't think we even get a narrator introduction. But yeah, the second episode
there's like, no voice acting.
Film.
Yeah.
It's a weird silent film homage. But let's stick with the first one first. Let's talk about Help Wanted, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. So there's the classic SpongeBob stuff. The very loud alarm clock. Gary, meow.
Yeah. I see. I had no response to Gary. Gary doesn't do it for me. I don't know if I just didn't watch the Gary-centric episodes, but I don't care about Gary in the slightest. It's weird. You know, Fred the Mutant, I was so happy to see, and I kind of feel like I should have a similar reaction to Gary. Just none.
I mean, I do, but that's because, I actually preferred the Gary-centric episodes. Those are the ones, if they came on, I would actually sit down and watch them.
Huh.
Because I found Gary amusing, because he's a snail who sounds like a cat. What's up with that?
I see.
It just makes me giggle. Every time I hear meow, I'm just like, he.
my reaction to Gary is exactly the same words that you said, but with like a furrowed brow. I'm like, he's a snail. That sounds like a cat. What is up with that? Like, no amusement whatsoever. I don't know why, but Gary does not do it for me. What does do it for me is SpongeBob saying the best way to start the day is by being naked. Like, that's the introduction to SpongeBob is, woohoo, nakedness. And I'm like, all right, SpongeBob, I feel you.
He jumps into his pants.
Yeah, just leaps into him.
I like his exercise routine.
Lift some weights.
Yeah. Kind of. Stuffed toys.
Stuffed toys on a stick.
Yeah.
I made a note about that. Said, man, I want a stuffed animal dumbbell. I'd feel triumphant every day by lifting weights, even if it was just stuffed animals on a stick.
See,
like, of course I lifted weights today.
Mine actually have actual weights. It's like 20 pounds or something.
That sounds real difficult now. My next note says...
It's just a little dumbbell.
My next note says, how much do you lift, bro? Dude, bro, I lift a bear and a bunny every day.
A bear and a bunny? Like, is the bunny on the back of the bear? How does that work?
Yeah, listen, you can lift a bear, but have you tried lifting a bear and a bunny? Come on now.
Well, it depends on the size of the bear. Like, are we talking a black bear or are we talking a grizzly?
It's a purple bear, if I remember right. He says I'm ready. I had no idea that I'm ready was from episode 1.
I'm ready.
Episode
ready.
1.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like one of the few like SpongeBob moments that I recall like very, very well, and I had no clue it was in episode 1. Which I've seen this episode. I've absolutely seen this episode before, and had no idea that this was the first episode. Let's see. He goes to Krusty Krab. They've got a help wanted sign.
So actually, this is the first appearance of Patrick as well, because Patrick pops up out of his from underneath his rock, and he's like, "You can do it."
Oh yeah, Patrick's so supportive.
And there's nothing else. It's just Patrick being supportive for like 2 seconds. They don't even introduce the character. It's just like, oh, there's a weird pink star. I don't think he gets introduced until like the 3rd arc of this episode.
No, his name gets mentioned at the end of this.
Okay.
Squidward says his name at the very end of it.
Oh, okay.
Which I only know because I was reading trivia about these episodes, and apparently in one of the later episodes, Squidward's like, what's your name? And they're like, this is an inconsistency because in episode 1, Squidward called Patrick by, and I was like, oh my gosh, people really nerd out on SpongeBob. Which, I mean,
yeah,
we're talking about SpongeBob on a podcast, so throwing stones and whatnot.
And I mean, for those listening, I just pushed my glasses up with one finger.
I have a note that says, man, why is Squidward so down on SpongeBob? And then my next note says, okay, never mind. SpongeBob is bouncing around the place like a moron. I totally get why why Squidward is so down on him now. I am annoyed by SpongeBob in that scene so quickly. Like, I'm like, oh, this show's fun. And then SpongeBob is literally like pinballing around the restaurant. And I was like, oh man, this would suck. Like, he's so, just tune it down, man.
Like, right before that, he's like, as he's going in to try and get this job at the Krusty Krab, he's like giving himself a huge pump-up speech. And then halfway through the pump-up speech, he's like, nah, can't do it. And he goes to walk away. And then Patrick shows back up and he's like, no, you gotta go in there. You gotta go get this job. You can do it. Like, you were born for this. And that's
that's right.
And that's when he walks in and he bounces around the place. And you're like, was he born for this job? I don't think he is. Look at him.
Yeah, I don't think you really have the restraint to do this. You might be. We'll talk more about SpongeBob. He has problems. We'll uncover more and more as we go through the show. But what happens here is he meets Mr. Krabs, right?
Yeah, he meets Mr. Krabs. He asks for a job, and then SpongeBob says, "Oh, Squidward can vouch for me." And Squidward is just like, one moment, and he pulls Mr. Krabs aside, and he's like, "No."
Squidward is not all about SpongeBob.
No. And then Mr. Krab sends him off to get an impossible spatula.
Yeah, it's got like auxiliary spatulas on the side and a motor, and it's gold plated, or it's all kinds of ridiculousness. Yeah. And then Mr. Krabs and Squidward are like laughing about it because they're like, "Well, haha, he'll never." And I'm like, "Man, what? You guys are jerks. Why didn't you just say no, man? You're not qualified for the job instead of being jerkholes."
I mean, we already knew. Like going into this, we already knew they were kind of jerks. Like, Mr. Krabs, like this greedy guy, and Squidward's kind of a sarcastic, like asshole. There's no better way to say it. He's kind of a downer.
Yeah, it's looking at this as a kids show. That's kind of an interesting thing because they're both awful to SpongeBob right away, but people freaking love Squidward and Mr. Krabs. But I'm like, they're jerks. Why do people like them so much?
Yeah,
I don't know. It made me mad. I was like, stop being mean to SpongeBob. Even though I'm annoyed by SpongeBob, don't be mean to him about it. Like,
you can be polite.
There's a more mature way to handle the situation. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
No, well, I completely agree. And I think this show is supposed to like highlight bad traits of people and how they act towards people they find annoying. Like, I thought, like, looking back on it as an adult, I'm like, oh, is this supposed to be like, yeah, some people are just assholes and you can't let them get to you sort of thing, because no matter who you are or like how you act sort of thing, it shouldn't have, these other people shouldn't affect you so bad.
Yeah.
It's really surprising. I finally got that mentality when I got older and not when I was watching SpongeBob. So it's like, oh yeah, this didn't teach me that. It was like, oh yeah, it's like it's supposed to teach you not everyone's supposed to is nice in the world, I guess.
I think that's one of the things I want to look at with this show and with I think a lot of the shows that we talk about, that's going to be an interesting idea to look at, is kind of what the overall message of the show is. Like Biker Mice from Mars, obviously environmentalism is the like overarching theme of the show. But yeah, I think that'll be an interesting thing to clue in on. And with SpongeBob particularly, I think each vignette, each story that SpongeBob tells has some kind of a message.
Yeah,
it's arguable.
It's like
how
in the background.
Effective. Yeah,
it's like way off in the background.
Some of them are bad too.
Yeah.
Like, some of them are not messages you should put in kids shows.
No.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. What else happens in this episode?
The anchovies coming up. Do you remember how many buses there were?
No, I don't.
There's 4 buses that show up. They surround the Krusty Krab.
Oh, like a square around it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. No escape. No escape from the anchovies. A smelly smell that smells smelly. That was like my favorite line in this episode.
Yeah. And then he goes, anchovies!
Anchovies! And then I have no notes on the anchovy section because it's just a lot of chaos.
I think they're all just going eat, 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 or feed, 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 or something like. They're all saying the same thing over and over really fast.
They all want to eat Mr. Krabs and Squidward. They got nothing. They can't keep up with this demand.
They don't. They're not even trying. Their place is getting wrecked, and the anchovies are just like tossing the cashier boat, like lifeboat around, and Mr. Krabs and Squidward are holding on to some pole while SpongeBob goes off to a mart. I can't remember what the market's called.
Yeah, I don't remember either. But if this spatula is supposed to be so dang impossible to find, and then
it was
SpongeBob
the last
just
one in
buys
the
it
store.
at his store.
Yeah, no, he walks in. It's like for all your spatula needs. That's exactly what he says.
Yeah,
when he walks
and he
into
just picks
the place.
it up. Just buys it.
He walks. No, well, you don't even see him pick it up because it just cuts back and forth between the mart, and SpongeBob is just walking through some aisles, and then all of a sudden he's back at the Krusty Krab with this impossible spatula, floating with it, like spinning around, and he's like, "Hey, I got it! It was the last one in the store."
Because doesn't it have like helicopter blades sticking out the top of it or something?
Out the sides, there's like extra spatulas that like spin. So
is that what he's flying on? Is the
Yeah.
side ones? The port and starboard attachments?
Yeah.
And then kicking the jams. Last week we had Guns N' Roses with Biker Mice from Mars.
Oh yeah.
This week we get Tiny Tim rocking out on the ukulele while SpongeBob goes to work and starts making Krabby Patties.
I forgot that was a part of this episode. So when it started up, I was like, what? Huh? I know this song. Wait, where do I know this song from? And then I'm like, do I know it just from this? Do I know it from this? Or do I actually know this song? Like, it was really confusing to me.
It's a real song. And I did not know it was in this either. But I learned about Tiny Tim when I started trying to learn to play ukulele. And when I first heard this song from Tiny Tim, I was like, oh, I've heard this before. And I think I was remembering hearing it in SpongeBob without realizing it.
So that's where I might have also heard it, because I also have a ukulele. Mm-hmm. Although mine's a little bit different from yours. Do you remember mine?
No.
I got the Flying V one.
Oh, yeah. Which is, like, impossible to play.
Yeah. You literally have to be sitting to play my ukulele, because you have to, like, jam the V onto your leg so you can have it stable while you play it.
Yeah. I remember looking at a Flying V ukulele and then being like, no. And then you got one, and no.
I told you about that, and you were just like, yeah, no. At that time as well.
And then SpongeBob saves the day, and Patrick shows up and he wants a Krabby Patty.
Yeah,
and I
so
think
all the anchovies leave, the Krusty Krab's wrecked, and Patrick's like, 1 Krabby Patty, please, and SpongeBob only seems to have 1 speed when making Krabby Patties at this point.
Yeah, and so like a billion Krabby Patties shoot out again, right?
Yeah, and he blasts Patrick out of the Krusty Krab with a bunch of patties. It's like, okay. That was weird.
My note on that says, and then I guess that SpongeBob makes a bunch? ?
Yeah, it's like, he only asked for 1. What? Is it the spatula because it's just so overpowered? Or is it like SpongeBob's mentality at that point? Like, it's his first day.
Yeah.
And then what I remember at the end of this is just Squidward yelling for Mr. Krabs.
Oh, that's right. Mr. Krabs! It made me wonder, is SpongeBob really suited to fast food? Because, like, for a minute, you're like, oh, man, he's really good at this. But if he can only make orders of 1 billion, he's probably not actually that well suited to fast food. Message. Did you feel like there was a moral in this story?
Sure. If you keep trying for stuff that you want, eventually you might get it.
Yeah, okay. I can take that.
It's a message of not giving up.
Yeah.
Because
I guess it is.
Because it starts off with him, like, giving up and then having a friend telling him he can do it. And then when he walks in, it's like the boss and everything, it's like, no. And then, it's not no. They're like, here, go get this impossible thing. Which should mean no to most people. But, well, to SpongeBob, he's not going to give up on his dream of becoming a fry chef. So, he goes out.
I guess perseverance, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. Fair enough. Then we get to Reef Blower, which is the one we referenced earlier. That's a silent film homage.
Yeah, this is a really short one. I've got like half the notes for Reef Blower as I do for the other ones.
Yeah, so Squidward has a shell in his yard, and he's not happy about it. So he puts it in SpongeBob's yard, because Squidward's the worst person ever.
Okay, I like how when he opens up the door, it's like this lovely day, and his yard's all pristine. not just his yard, but like his neighbor's yards, they're all pristine except for this one shell that's in Squidward's yard. So he walks up, and I think he kicks it, or does he actually throw it?
Kicks it.
Yeah.
My note says he kicked it into SpongeBob's yard. What a jerk. And then SpongeBob sees it and gets a big leaf blower out to try to blow it away, and it annoys Squidward because it's so loud and blows the sand and stuff.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how the whole thing goes. He's just out there with a leaf blower, and it's all Foley work.
Yeah. Can I read you a passage from my notes here?
Sure.
It says, my notes, I have 4 bullet points in a row. First is this a silent episode? Followed by, SpongeBob just pointed, and there was a subtitle saying you, instead of hearing him say you. And the next says, it's totes a silent film episode. And then the next in all caps says, how does a new cartoon make a silent film in its 2nd episode?
So, I'm thinking this was actually the first one they filmed. And it was like...
Oh.
It was
before
like...
they had voice actors,
yeah.
Maybe. That's possible. I don't know. It was fun, though. It was just... I mean... It's weird, because...
Do you remember?
It feels like you would need to be an adult to enjoy this. But I'm totally wrong about that. Like, kids would love this.
No,
you don't need any dialogue.
No. Do you remember how SpongeBob gets out of his pineapple?
Yes. He slides around in a way that really upset me.
No, he like squeezes out of the window. That's upsetting.
Oh, that part didn't bother me. It's that he then like is on his he's laying on his back and just
and it's
sliding around.
Yeah, and you're like, what's going on?
Why does he do that? I don't like it.
And then he comes out with a giant leaf blower that they're calling a reef blower.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And well, it's really loud, and it's a silent episode, so it's like the only noise other than music in the whole episode.
It's just
yeah. And like you said, Squidward's a big grump, so he's all annoyed. Mm-hmm. And then he gets covered in sand while he's eating.
Yep. Blows the sand all over his food, and then it gets in his eyes and all on top of him.
Yep. And then it's on SpongeBob's footpath, and he goes and cleans that up, and by sucking it up into the machine, which inevitably breaks the machine and makes all the gears and innards fall back out.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just... Do you remember how he fixes it?
I don't remember how he fixed that specifically. I remember he sucked up the whole ocean in the end.
No. So what he does is he picks up the pile of sand with all the gears and stuff in it, and he just jams it back into the machine and then zips it back up.
Oh, perfect.
And then he has to start it up again. So he's doing the ripcord.
Those pull start things. Yeah. I hate those. They're
so
the worst.
He pulls it, and it doesn't start up. So he grabs hold of it and he walks like 3 kilometers or a couple of miles away. And then he like I can't remember how it happens, but it's like he jumps or something and it pulls him back.
I think I was just so upset about the pull start that I like blacked out my memory of what happened with the pull start.
Yeah, no, so I just remember him like pulling it back for ages, and then he does something and it
zooms him back in.
Yeah, and it starts back up.
Which then sucks up the whole ocean, and then it all comes back out, and the shell comes down, and it lands on Squidward's face.
Yep, and the neighborhood's wrecked, and the only pristine lawn now is SpongeBob's.
I feel like, and then Bikini Bottoms is wrecked is the end of about 70% of SpongeBob SquarePants episodes.
I could see that happening, yeah.
Story 3?
Yeah.
Tea at the Treedome. SpongeBob makes a new friend in Sandy Cheeks, a squirrel in an astronaut suit who has a bubble dome house that she lives in. She invites SpongeBob over for tea, and he's all about it because he's totally got a crush on Sandy. And turns out there's no water in the bubble dome, Treedome thing, and SpongeBob, like, nearly dies, which is also, I feel like, a common story element in SpongeBob SquarePants episodes.
Also Patrick.
Yeah, actually, yeah, they both nearly die in this one.
Yeah.
It starts with Jellyfish Hunting, wearing SpongeBob's big nerdy glasses, which I love SpongeBob's big nerdy glasses. They make me really happy.
Is it because we also wear big nerdy glasses?
Yeah, mostly. I was just realizing, like, oh, we're both wearing, like, pretty similar frames to what he was wearing. Not quite as thick, but pretty similar. No. And then there's a cool ninja scene where SpongeBob and Sandy are both doing karate.
Yeah, well, Sandy is trapped in a giant clam when we first see her. And she escapes, and then as she escapes and she's walking away, the giant clam flies over and snatches her back up. And then SpongeBob is like, I'll save that land squirrel. Because he has a book that tells him that it's a land squirrel.
Yeah, he has just an encyclopedia of everything on him at all times, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
But he walks up and he's like standing on top of the shell, and he's like got his fingers in the shell thing, in like the joint, and he's and he's like he's struggling. He's like trying to pull it, which probably has something to do with him standing on top of the shell.
Yeah. I mean, well, in cartoon logic, that's fine. You can stand on top of a thing and pry it open in cartoon logic.
But it's actually Sandy who's opening it from inside, you find out. Yeah. And then she has it pried open. And I think this is where SpongeBob comes running back after getting flung off somewhere and attacks like the actual clam inside.
Yeah, but it's basically the ultimate point of this part is that Sandy is good at fighting the clam and SpongeBob is not. He's very bad at it, but ultimately they beat the clam.
And then they have a what is it? A bonding moment over both enjoying karate.
Yeah, except for SpongeBob doesn't know anything about karate, and Sandy clearly does.
Yeah, he's real bad.
My note says, ugh, what a dude. He doesn't know any karate. He's just some entitled dude who thinks he's better than any girl he sees. This made me so mad. SpongeBob, I hated SpongeBob in this episode. The first episode when he was bouncing around, I was like, oh, that's annoying. In this episode, I'm like, you're a bad character. Like, you're being such like, oh, I hate it, because everything he does in this episode is because he's trying to impress a girl and thinks that he's the hottest shit ever, but he's terrible. He's so bad. He's so awful.
It's macho bullshit. It's toxic.
Such macho bullshit.
It's toxic masculinity. Yeah,
and I mean, the only thing I'll give it is I think they do this intentionally, because they're like, SpongeBob is not celebrated in this episode for these things.
No,
like, you're clearly supposed to be laughing at him for the stupid macho bullshit. But yeah, again, interesting theme to put in a kids cartoon. I think this one's actually a good one, except for it's a little conflicted because you're showing your hero demonstrating toxic masculinity. So like, you and I can watch it and go, man, SpongeBob is being awful in this, but I don't know if little kids would necessarily see it that way. I think that's the intention. But
I mean, there's also the thing, like, Sandy's kind of badass. Like, she's like, when you see her in this episode, you're like, oh, Sandy's like the good thing in this episode. It's not SpongeBob, it's not Patrick, it's bloody Sandy. Like, she's cool as fuck.
Yeah, Sandy is badass. She's also like so patient for dealing with SpongeBob's bullshit, because when he was like, yeah, I like karate and, you know, face plants or whatever dumb shit that he does, Sandy could have been like, oh, you don't know anything about karate, do you? You're just awful. And she could have walked away, but no, she puts up with him, which she shouldn't have. I wish
she finds him like, entertaining for some reason.
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, Sandy's great.
She is.
So I love that she's like a Texas squirrel, and she's like full on yeehaw cowboy, but she's in this spacesuit
for reasons, because she needs air.
Yeah.
She invites him back over to her place and says something about there being air. And he says that he really likes air. And my notes say, he doesn't know what air is, does he?
Yeah.
And then the next note is, he runs back to Patrick to ask him what air is. And I was like, okay, yeah. So SpongeBob continues to be awful.
And then Patrick says putting on airs, which is
that's a good joke.
It's a really good joke. And what I didn't get when I was like a kid is like, Patrick's supposed to be the dumb one, but he says some really smart shit.
Yeah, like the fact that he knows the phrase "putting on airs" is but it's complicated by the fact that he's like, "Oh, I know how to put on airs. You just hold your pinky up as high as you can, not while drinking tea, just all the time." So
it's like, okay, so it's like, oh, he said this really smart, funny thing, and then he backs it up with something really funny and stupid at the same time, and you're like, okay, yeah, I can see why they put Patrick in this.
Yep. He's good. Patrick is a fun character.
Yeah.
SpongeBob, Patrick is consistent in a way that I feel like SpongeBob isn't. Like, SpongeBob fluctuates in like how intelligent and aware of the world he is, whereas Patrick will always be Patrick.
Oh yeah, he's dumb, and he might say smart things from every now and then, but as soon as he says the smart thing, he like completely destroys it by saying something really stupid right after it.
Yep.
And then the other thing is like he's really supportive.
Yeah, he's so loyal. He's he's a good friend. He's just like too dumb to exist.
Yeah.
Whereas SpongeBob is like manic and overwhelming. Where it's like Patrick's never overwhelming to me. He's just like, aw, Patrick.
And then SpongeBob is at the dome.
Yeah. So he goes over to Sandy's dome and goes inside and immediately like starts dying and flopping around like a fish.
So I like when the water's draining out and she's just like, just wait 1 minute, and the water starts draining out. And as soon as the water's gone, he starts freaking out and he's like banging on the door and everything. And as soon as he gets in, he's like flopping around like a fish out of water. Yep. And it's just like, there's no water in here.
Sandy describes the air as the driest, purest, most airiest air in the entire sea.
Yep.
I have notes that say, "Stop lying to impress a girl!" !
Oh yeah.
And then my next note is, "Ugh, this is making me so mad."
Look, my line here, my lies again about air starts drying out. Those are my notes. Oh, and then Sandy points out all the features of her dome, and one of them's a bird bath. Mm-hmm. And there's a bird in it who's splashing around. And immediately when Sandy isn't looking, SpongeBob goes and soaks up the water out of it. And the bird looks really pissed off.
I mean, yeah, he's just,
he's terrible.
Like 3 gags in a row of him trying to get water. So he gets it from the bird bath. She's got some flowers in water. He's thinking about trying to get those. She offers him a glass of water, and he's like, "Oh, give me that." And it's just like this repeated thing where all he needs to say is, "Hey, I made a mistake. I didn't quite understand what you had meant earlier about air because I'm a moron and didn't know what that word was. I actually need water. So can I get some water, please, or I'm going to die?" And instead, he's like,
he just suffers. SpongeBob is suffering. Like, very toxic masculinity thing. He's just like, I can do this. I don't need what I need.
You made a mistake, dude. Just admit you made a mistake. That's all you have to do.
Ask for help.
Yeah, it's bad for you. It's bad for her. You're building a relationship on lies, SpongeBob. Meanwhile, Patrick's outside horrified that SpongeBob has forgotten to hold his pinky in the air.
Yeah. And he's trying to be encouraging, and he's trying to tell him to hold his pinky up. And then SpongeBob runs for the airlock, and he's trying to get out, and he can't open the airlock door. Mm-hmm. And that's when Patrick comes in.
And we get my favorite moment in the entire first episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. They dry out to the point.
Wait, actually, there's... He runs to the airlock, and then he's like, oh no, he has another toxic masculinity moment, and he's like, oh no, I can survive this, and he goes back and he drinks the vase. Then he runs back to the airlock again, and that's when Patrick
comes in.
Yeah.
And then they dry out, and it cuts to an actual photo of a dried kitchen sponge and a starfish.
Yep.
This is my favorite. It's my favorite joke in the whole thing. Was that cut to that photo?
Yeah.
And then Sandy comes up, like the angel that she is, and goes, "If y'all need water, you should have asked."
Yeah, and well, actually, she discovers them, and she's all horrified. And then it cuts to her on a ladder with a hose. And you just see her on a ladder with a hose, and she's like holding this hose out. And you're like, at first I'm like, wait, is she just watering them? Or is this the scene with them with the fish bowls? And then it cuts to them with the fish bowls on their head. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, it is the fish bowl head thing.
Yep. It's cute. It's a cute end. And then she tries to give them tea, but they can't drink it. So she brews tea in their fishbowl heads.
Oh yeah, that's the best thing. It's like she gives them tea in a glass, and they both just pour it onto the onto the bowl. Well, I'm like,
so dumb.
You two morons. What are you doing? And then she's just like, oh, here, I hope you like your tea strong. And she just puts the bags in the fish bowls, and then Patrick puts his pinky up in the air.
Oh yeah.
And
he's up.
And SpongeBob follows him.
I like that this episode is trying to say that line of Sandy's. If y'all need water, you should ask. That's the moral of this episode. Is that one sentence?
It's very much. This is toxic masculinity before anyone knew that term.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is what guys do wrong all the time. You know, when you get lost and you don't want to pull over and ask for directions, this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
I think the only misstep for me is that it's SpongeBob, and he's our hero character, so I don't know if as kids this would come across. If you had Squidward doing all of these things, I think it would be clear, like, oh, what he's doing is bad. But because it's SpongeBob doing it, I wonder if kids actually get that lesson out of it or not. Because he's SpongeBob. It can't be bad. He's just SpongeBob, you know?
Yeah. I'm not sure if kids are going to get it. But I'm sure there's a few mums out there who are watching that episode and they're just giggling to themselves.
That's probably true. But that's something that, you know, that I think we both knew, and that we're going to see more and more as we do more of these shows, is that a lot of these shows aren't for... A lot of the pieces of these shows isn't for the kids. It's for the parents who are watching along.
Oh, yeah.
And
but
I think,
because they have to put their kids down to watch something, and they can't just leave their kid alone. They're going to see bits and parts of this show as well. So I always forget, like, the people who are making these shows are adults as well. So they're going to put their own jokes in there for themselves as well. So these adult jokes go over the kids' heads. But, like, once you become an adult and you go back for the nostalgia aspect of, like, these shows, you really catch on to a lot of stuff that you would have missed as a kid.
Yeah, I think that's true. There are layers. They did a good job. I think SpongeBob does a particularly good job with having layers to the stories that they're telling. So it can appeal to a wide audience. Hey, I thought of a really good ending for this episode.
Okay.
But I need you to say the part about seeing bits and parts of the thing. Something about seeing the bits and parts of the thing.
Bits and parts of the thing?
Yeah, because you talked about the bits and parts of the episode. You'll see different bits and parts.
Okay.
It'll be worth it. Trust me. Just say something about seeing bits and parts of the.
So you see bits and parts of like adult humor in there.
Yeah, we'll see some bits and parts of SpongeBob next week when we watch Bubble Stand and Ripped Pants. Because his dick is out. His sponge dick is out.
It doesn't come out, but
it does. At the end of it.
Yeah, his underwear rip off, but he covers up before they rip.
As they rip. He is holding in his hands his little sponge dick. We know it. I know it. We all know it. Nobody's talking about it, but we all know it. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the best animated shows ever, so far. Find the show on Twitter at BaseSFcast or email us at basesfcast@gmail.com. That's BASESFCAST. Our intro music is Funnin' and Sunnin', and our outro music is Motivator, both by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com, and licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Thanks again for listening, and tune in next time.
This has been a presentation
of the We Can Make This Work
Probably Network.
Follow us on Twitter
at Probably Work
for more of our questionable content.
Also, we have a website called probablywork.com.